What's up? Brian Carroll here with Jonathan Bird, 1020 Life HQ. Excuse me. We're going to talk about baseline a little bit today. We've written a couple articles on this. We've talked about it a lot. You've probably seen the phrase, what do we mean by baseline? John, what do you mean by baseline? What comes to mind when you hear the word baseline or the phrase?
Your starting point, where you're going to begin and adjust off of that. You don't want to be shooting for the stars too high. You don't want to be too low. It's just your where you're going to gauge everything from.
Yeah. So it's a starting point. It's where you deviate from. It's where you deviate back to when things aren't going right. It's your starting point. So whether it's your diet at 3,500 calories, which mine is around 3,500, I start there for each training cycle, off season. If I'm getting fat, I start messing with the macros a little bit. If I'm getting too lean, too fast, then I add a little bit of fat and carbs in, and it'll start deviating at 250 calories or so at a time. I don't go from 3,500 to 9,500 calories. It's little increments in between. I may end up around 4,250 or something like that, but I'm not just jumping over 5,000 just because things aren't going exactly the way I want it within a week or two. It's small increases over time. With that said, if I start getting fat, I start creeping back towards that 3,500 mark baseline. Same thing with your training. There's a point that we all know, those that have been doing it long enough, we know what's effective. The amounts are effective, whether it's supplementation, whether it's diet, whether it's training. So we don't go from 4 sets of 5 on something to 9 sets of 5 or 10 sets of 5. We go in small increments at a time so we know what actually works. Because let's say we're a little stagnant. We usually do 5 sets of 5 with something and we're saying, hey, we need some more volume, need to increase my work capacity a little bit. Let's not do 5 anymore, let's do 10. That's kind of stupid.
That's a big jump.
What about 6 or 7? And then if you're making progress, stop there. You don't always want to tap the tank just for the sake of doing it, because a lot of times it's going to be too much, you're going to fuck yourself all up, and we don't want to do that ever.
I mean, where do you go? If you go to the max right to start with, there's nowhere else to
Most
go.
likely you're going to be coming down anyway pretty quick, so keep track of it. A baseline is something you keep track of. You need to keep a notepad. You need to keep notes in a Word document. Each training cycle you do, whether you keep a training log or not, you need to have these intimate details established so you know what works for you at the end of the day and what does not. Because we all end up, for some reason, going back to things that we know don't work if we don't have these safeguards in place.
Yep.
You know, it happens all the time. This can be said, once again, for supplementation, for diet, for training, for cardio, anything. Always have a baseline. Once it's established, then you know your starting point. You got anything else to add with that?
Just be aware of what has worked in the past, and if you need to make increases, slight, small increases. I get into this all the time with clients. Oh, I need more volume. I need more volume. I need more volume. You added 150 pounds to your total in the last training cycle. Why do you think you need more volume? What part didn't work for you? Be aware. If things are working, you do not need to throw another wrench into it. Let it keep working. When it becomes stagnant and slow, then you deviate.
I think people like to change just for the sake of change sometimes.
Yeah.
And they think they need to change something. They end up chasing their tail for months and years at a time.
You come right back to where they started.
And what's the starting point called again? They come right back to the baseline. They just don't know what they did at the time. They chase their tail for a while and they're like, oh shit, this is what worked for me. I'm going to go back to this. That is your baseline. Your starting point, what works for you. Deviate small amounts over time. Thank you.